So good afternoon, Europe, and good evening, Asia. Welcome to the webinar on the role of community learning centers across Asia and Europe. And with this activity, we also officially launched Network 7 of the Asia-Europe Meeting Lifelong Learning Hub, which is on non-formal and informal learning. We are currently live, not only here in Zoom, but also through the Facebook page of the ASEM LLL Hub. So you might want to share it with your friends and colleagues who are interested to join us. I am Jubilee Seth Hervasio, an assistant professor from the University of the Philippines Open University, and I'm one of your moderators, together with my colleague Brikena Somaki, the director of the Lifelong Learning Platform of the European Civil Society for Education. This webinar is brought to you by the ASEM Lifelong Learning Hub, hosted by the University College Cork, Ireland, and the following institutions. Please allow me to mention them. The Lifelong Learning Platform of the European Civil Society for Education, the University of the Philippines Open University, particularly the Faculty of Management and Development Studies, the Sukhothai Thammasat Open University of Thailand, Dublin City University, the City of Balangas Education and Excellence Development Office in the Philippines, and CEDEFOP, or the European Center for the Development of Vocational Training. So today's webinar will showcase good practices on learning centers, presenting different models and approaches, increase the awareness on strategies for promoting social inclusion and lifelong learning, and provide recommendations for policymakers and stakeholders to strengthen and support community learning centers. So please, without much ado, I would now like to call on Dr. Seamus Otauma, the chair of the ASEM LLL Hub, to deliver the opening remarks. Seamus, please.
Okay, I won't speak for long. Thank you very much, Juvie, for that very nice introduction. I would just say that the genesis of this idea comes from Brikena initially, through many conversations I had with Brikena about trying to create a better visibility for civil society, informal and non-formal learning in the ASEM Lifelong Learning Hub. And it really, I suppose, took on a huge impetus through my visit to Southeast Asia last November, where I had the privilege of seeing incredible work in Thailand and the Philippines. And I'm glad that Sumali and Tara are both here because they've been very instrumental in both of those. So I'm really excited about this because it's critically important that the learner is front and center of everything we do. And I think in the non-formal and informal learning sector, this is particularly true. I think, can we just move to the next one there, Nia, because I'm not sure how. Yeah, okay. So just to give people a very, very quick overview of the ASEM Lifelong Learning Hub. The ASEM Lifelong Learning Hub is an official part of the ASEM process, which is the I would say the unsexy word of Asia-Europe meeting. It's not exactly the most dynamic title in the world, but it does describe a very interesting process, which is engagement between Asia and Europe over 50 countries and includes the ASEAN Secretariat and also the European Commission as partners. It set out its life under the patronage of the Danish government and is now currently being supported by the Government of Ireland through the two ministries, DFERIS, which is the Department of Further and Higher Education and Research, and the one Ministry for Foreign Affairs. I don't want to go into too much detail, but just to say that Ireland, I suppose, has a tradition of being a country that tries to engage in the world in a collaborative and partnership model. And that is definitely the orientation that we have been taking in terms of having responsibility for the hosting of the ASEM Lifelong Learning Hub. We wanted to be as collaborative and inclusive as possible. Very glad, for instance, to see my alma mater, DCU, being represented here today. So I have that connection as well. So it's very nice to see that. We had originally 6 research networks. 4 of them we continued from our period with Denmark, RN1, which is ASEM, which is around online e-learning and increasingly now artificial intelligence, workplace learning, which has been led by Professor Karen Evans. And she has been leading that in the previous round and now, and has been doing an inspiring job in relation to that. RN3 has gone through a bit of a reconfiguration, and we're, I think, making a lot of progress there around professionalization of adult teachers. RN4 is National Strategy for Lifelong Learning, which is led by Mike Osborne. And he as well has been operating on this in relation to that since before the emergence of Ireland as the host. Then RN5 is brand new and is led by Lindsay Alamoud here in UCC, and it's around lifelong learning transitions. So it's about all the mechanisms that we can deploy in terms of creating opportunities for learners in higher education in particular. RN6 is Learning Cities and Learning Regions, and we are very closely aligned with the project of UNESCO there around learning cities, this is also a new one. And now our latest one is RN7, non-formal and informal learning. So I suppose it's critical that each one of these creates an impact, and I'm very, very happy that we've got such a huge attendance here today for the launch of this one, and it really bodes well for great success. And thanks to Juvie, Sumali, Tara and Brekina, especially for their driving this agenda so far, and I'm sure it's got a good start, and I think it will go from strength to strength from here. Now, one of the things we've tried to do is we've tried to ensure that all the networks have joint leadership in terms of Asia and Europe. So the network coordinators are Juvie and Brekina. So we've a foot in both continents, and in support of them, we have Tara, who's in the Philippines, and in one of the most amazing learning cities on planet Earth in Balanga. Really, really, really inspiring and impressive one. And Sumali, who is in Thailand. And Sumali brought me to a neighborhood learning project last year in Thailand, which was mind-blowing. I'm still talking about it everywhere I go. So thank you both. And Pia, our colleague and friend from Denmark, keeping the Danish connection alive and well. And Pia has been a wonderful support to us as well. And she's been engaged in a lot of work with us and has been very supportive as well. So thank you to all 5 of you for your leadership, and I wish you well, and I'm looking forward to engaging with you and being involved with you in this and future projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Seamus, for that explanation, because a lot of people are curious, probably curious what ASEM LLL is all about, at the same time about this network. So thank you again. So now let's proceed to the presentations. May I now call Brekina to handle this session and introduce our speakers from.
Thank you very much. And I'm glad to be moderating this webinar and this launching event with you, Juvie. Thank you, Seamus, as well, for having us and for creating the space for this exchange on this very important topic that we would like to address today. So we have a few distinguished speakers, experts in the field, and I have the honor to introduce the first speakers on the European cases that will share with us some insights on how community centers work in Europe, what is the different approaches, what are the examples, what are they for, how were they built. So we will share some of this information with you. And for doing so, we will start with Irene Psifidou from CEDEFOP. Irene is an expert in the field of vocational education and training. She represents CEDEFOP, the European agency that works on these issues, working on and leading the team on vets for youth, teachers and trainers, working in her agency mostly with issues related to early leaving from education and training. And she has quite a lot of experience when it comes to the multidisciplinary intervention approaches for early leavers and those that are not in education, employment, and training. So Irene, we have the pleasure to have you as the first speaker to share with us more intelligence on this issue. The floor is yours, and there is a presentation that will be shared by the colleagues. So Irene, welcome, and up to you now.
Thank you very much, Brikenna. It's a great pleasure to be once again with you at this occasion and talking again about multidisciplinary intervention approaches embedded in community lifelong learning centers for motivating those most at risk. So as those of you who follow developments in the EU, just to tell you that I cannot move the slides. I will try again once to take the control of the slides and continue. Can you give me the control to share my slides?
Please, you have the control at the moment, Rena.
Unfortunately, I cannot. Okay, yes, now. Okay, sorry for that. Now it's fine. As those of you who follow the EU developments, you may know that at EU policy level, there is an increasing recognition on the importance of combining services for marginalized groups in a community-based location as one-stop shop multidisciplinary teams. These so-called community lifelong learning centers engage actively a wide range of professionals, such as social and health services, youth services, outreach care workers, psychologists, guidance specialists, youth workers, local authorities. So such a model allows for a more flexible, more accessible approach, which aims to engage socioeconomically excluded groups. Marginalized young people tend to distrust any support coming from public authorities and very rarely directly contact specialized services. However, any efforts towards their re-engagement in education and training or in the labor market are likely to fail if not accompanied by measures to tackle issues in other areas of their lives. This multidisciplinary approach within community lifelong learning centers helps overcome fragmentation of services and allows to establish a continuum of strategic interventions in these services. So within this context, these individuals and their families feel at ease as they are offered a functional alternative to formal education. So when offered non-formal education options, which is also the focus of today's occasion, individuals feel comfortable and may build a trustful relationship with the professionals involved. They may increase their self-esteem and motivation to learn. And as you may know, these are important ingredients for reactivating those in need. Try to go to the next slide, but doesn't work again. Okay, so since 2019, CEDEFOP, in cooperation with the Lifelong Learning Platform and the Education Disadvantaged Centre in Ireland, made a systematic effort to raise awareness on the need of such community lifelong learning centres and join their forces to bring new evidence on their role. In May 2019, CEDEFOP and LLLP organized a high-level policy learning forum, bringing together key stakeholders to explore the potential of community lifelong learning centers as one-stop shop for preventing early school leavers from disconnecting. Brikena, you may remember, the event was hosted by the Romanian presidency of the Council and gave really a great visibility to existing good practices of community lifelong learning centers. A few months later, in August 2019, we published together a briefing paper implementing a holistic, it's on your right in the screen, the one called Implementing a Holistic Approach to Lifelong Learning, Community Lifelong Learning Centers as a Gateway to Multidisciplinary Support Team. And that was really also a good way to bring together evidence from good practices, raise awareness, and inspire policymakers. In that event that I just mentioned to you, we at CEDEFOP launched the new edition of CEDEFOP's VET Toolkit for Tackling Early Leaving. This is a one-stop shop online platform offering a plethora of resources to policymakers and practitioners who aim to tackle early leaving from education and training. And as you may imagine, although it is primarily designed for vocational education and training, as we are CEDEFOP, it also offers several intervention approaches that have been conceptualized with a holistic perspective in mind and can be easily implemented by community lifelong learning centers. A few years later, in 2021, sorry, we're here in the second toolkit, acknowledging at CEDEFOP the specific characteristic and needs of those who are not in employment, education, or training, the so-called needs, we launched at CEDEFOP a second VET toolkit specifically for empowering needs. So I wish to invite you to have a look to the resources offered in these toolkits, and you will see that within the needs toolkit, there is a risk factor section where one may see that often education is only one among the many challenges in young people's lives. So those at risk of becoming needs, of becoming inactive, of becoming socially excluded, have complex and multiple needs. They may have health, psychosocial, legal, or housing problems, among many other issues that you may see in the slide. So if we take a closer look to see who and how many are actually at risk in Europe, we will see that 90.9%, almost 1 out of 10 young people are early school leavers, meaning they haven't qualified in upper secondary education. 13.1% of young women and 10.5% of young men aged 15 to 29 in the European Union are needs. And 128 million are low-skilled adults in the EU27, Iceland, Norway, and the UK. This astronomical number, it's almost represents half of the adult population in these countries. And when I talk about low-skilled adults, this is a highly heterogeneous population comprising people with very different characteristics and needs, including people with low education, with low digital skills, low cognitive skills, or medium-high education, but who are at risk of skill loss and obsolescence. Those at risk, as you may well know, often accumulate several vulnerabilities and are furthest away from the labor market, as I just said, or if they are employed, they are in precarious jobs and they are at a higher risk of unemployment. But also they benefit the least from education opportunities. As you may see in the graph on the right of this slide, their participation in further education and training is considerably below average, and it has not grown a lot over recent years. So as you saw, levels of education are associated with, the low levels of education are associated with economic and social consequences, not only for the individuals, which in our discourse, I think is at the center of the attention, but it's also for their families and the whole economy and society. On the other hand, investing in education and in lifelong learning is linked to higher economic and social returns. Thus, in my view, Empowering low-educated and early school leavers by a multidisciplinary and whole community approach must be seen as a priority, especially nowadays that employment and the economy overall is becoming skills intensive. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm available for questions at the end of the session.
Thank you very much, Irene. That was a very valuable introduction actually to the topic, which I'm sure many of the participants would like to hear more. But as you mentioned, we will probably go to the next speaker first, and then we will have a chance to focus on the European case and discuss it further with the participants, and so allow them to ask questions as well. So let me maybe introduce next Professor Paul Downs. Thank you very much for being with us, Professor of Psychology and Education Director in the Dublin City University Educational Disadvantage Centre, School of Human Development, Institute of Education, St. Patrick's Campus, Drumcondra. So that's a lot of names. So you are going to explain us a bit. Is this a typically Irish thing? And yeah, we would like to hear from you. What are the characteristics of these lifelong learning community centres, and how do you use them to indeed cater those that are disadvantaged and marginalized groups? So I know you are together with your colleague Sarah. I'm not sure I can see her, but please, the floor is yours, and we are really happy to have you and hear from you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Burkina. What is not typically Irish is that the sun is shining today and it's the hottest day of the year. The other part about various sections and subsections in the university is something that probably happens in lots of universities here. Could I just ask you, could you share my slides, and then I just need to be able to move them? Thanks, Burkina. Cheers. Thanks. Great. Okay, so as Burkina mentioned, 4 of us have prepared from our Education Disadvantage Centre, have prepared today's presentation. 2 of us, myself and Sarah McManus, will speak on the issues today, and looking at key features and examples around community lifelong learning centres. I'm hoping this will move. To see how to move it. Yes. Okay. So I want to foreground, first of all, a concept that is often very much invisible, which is that of space. That we often, particularly in Western cultures, have a tradition of seeing space as abstract, as irrelevant, whereas space, I argue, very much is a concept of inclusion, is a concept of space, and space is a system of relations. So we are looking about designing spaces that are going to engage learners who maybe have been previously alienated from the system, who did not enjoy formal education and are maybe marginalized from society. So I very much emphasize the social space feature of community lifelong learning centres. One study that was done by former colleague Ellen Burren in 2010, a large-scale European study on motivations for engaging in lifelong learning, found that the #1 motivation for adults across Europe to go back to education and go into lifelong learning was not employment issues, actually, but was to meet new people, social aspects. So it's about how you design social spaces that people feel at home in is a key question for community lifelong learning centres. I've seen a number of them, for example, in France and in Germany, which call themselves community lifelong learning centres, but they're often not that friendly in terms of, you don't see the minority groups representations on the wall. They're not bright colors. They're quite bureaucratic, office-like structures. I've seen ones in Sweden which were much more user-friendly, which had couches, a drop-in approach. People could come in for cups of tea, bean bags, a much more relaxed kind of space. So I would really emphasize the importance of the spatial dimension here for how you design it, as well as that it is accessible. Another point here, and this builds on what Raina was saying, is that you want to create a welcoming environment, because you cannot assume that marginalized communities have a trust of the system, have a trust of society or of education. So you have to make proactive steps to ensure that you can reach out to them in a welcoming, non-threatening way to create that space so that you are building bridges, literally, as part of a non-formal education strategy, as well as having learner-centered approaches that are trying to build on this, but also in that the physical place of the environment. I remember in the German example I visited, it was quite far from the local community where the people were living in. So they had to get maybe 1 or 2 buses to travel there. We want spaces that are accessible, near, as well as welcoming for different marginalized groups. Also, a key principle here, as well as the space idea, is that of assertive outreach. This is the idea that it's beyond just giving people information, and also it's beyond labeling groups as hard to reach because your mode of communication is inadequate. So it needs to go beyond leaflets, websites, information models. That will not reach the marginalized communities. So you have to change the communicative approach, and that's what a community lifelong learning center, at least the good ones, do. So an assertive outreach approach means a much more active engagement approach. So this also involves looking not only at the what question about what you are saying to young people or adults alienated from society, but where are the questions being asked? How are people being related to, and who is doing this? Is the person who's promoting the Lifelong Learning Centre somebody with cultural credibility for that minority group, or from the community of higher poverty? So it's very much important that the staff of the Community Lifelong Learning Centre are in some way reflective of the community they're trying to reach in. This also builds on Jerome Bruner's work in psychology about moving from information processing approaches to construction of meaning for meaningful engagement, for marginalized groups. Also, it's important that your Lifelong Learning Centre is very clear on differentiating strategies to see what groups you are targeting in a community. Are you looking for all of the young people or adults in an area? Are you trying to devise courses and sessions targeting particular groups, particular minority groups, particular groups who've left school early or with low education, so a group-based approach, moderate risk-based approach? Or are you looking for individual intensive supports? And the argument would be probably the best examples of these centres would embrace all of 3 of those different levels. So the individual intensive support one is often a neglected one in community lifelong learning centres. Our report for the European Commission on multidisciplinary teams emphasised that the need for one-stop shops, that we need to put our services in one place, not have them all over the place in a fragmented system response. And so, as was mentioned earlier, a lot of these issues are beyond just education. A lot of them involve, mental health issues, social support issues, speech and language issues. So can we create centres which have combined health and education with these types of services? But when we talk about multidisciplinary teams, it's very important that these are not just committee sitters sipping lattes, talking about families, but they are directly working and engaging with families and young people. And also it's about trying to go beyond what Professor Anne Edwards from Oxford refers to as passing on bits of the child, a referral system which is again a very much a fragmented approach. We want to have the teams combined in one place. And also we want to try to stop territories between different local services fighting with each other, trying to help the same group. So you put them in one location, a co-location approach that hones in on those with higher need. This also brings me on to another key feature of some examples I'm going to mention to you now in Ireland, which is the gateway principle. And this builds also on our Romanian EU presidency briefing paper that Raina mentioned earlier from CEDEFOP, the Lifelong Learning Platform, and our own Education Advantage Centre. A key concept of that is that the Community Lifelong Learning Centre can be a wider bridge where you can have maybe many different young people or adults going to the centre. And from those, a certain number may also require more specialist services for complex needs, trauma, mental health, family violence, drug addiction. So can you combine the high-level specialist services with the more group-based classes approach? Can you combine these in one location as part of a gateway approach? And the family-based example I'll give you in a minute or two does that. So we're looking here to sort of have a co-location between the multidisciplinary teams and the adult education classes as part of a community lifelong learning approach. And this this recognizes that it takes a lot of trust and relationship building to get somebody to really go to access the service that they need that will be on the same site. So often you can have services, but people don't act on them or don't go to them because they don't feel at ease in the location. Whereas if you create classes and courses and drop-in places where they feel at ease, then they're more likely to access the multidisciplinary team services. So an example of a gateway wraparound model is family-based Ballyfermot, formerly Family Scope. So this is a model which tries to combine the arts, wider drop-in approaches where you have all the young people in the community. Adults are welcome to come also. And there's, I said, a strong arts-based approach. And from that, maybe you might have 50 in a group engaging in the arts. There may be 5 or 10 that may need the more specialist services that would be on site also in the family-based Ballyfermot. So it's a one-stop shop that's a community lifelong learning centre and a gateway to specialist services. It also combines a system of care approach. So this is the idea that you try to not just have coordination between services or interagency cooperation, you have teams. So it's a community-based team that can also engage with schools. So it's also very much a co-creation approach. The voices of young people, the voices of ethnic minorities, the voices of people who have been excluded from the system in the past. So that they are creating and designing and giving suggestions actively for those types of initiatives. Just to note also, so it's very much, as I said, a needs-led approach, hearing what the young people and families are saying, as well as an assertive outreach approach to engage with some of the most vulnerable families. Now, this is quite a large space. To translate that from square feet into meters, I will leave to the mathematicians in the audience to do that as a task later in the session. But basically, that is quite a large community space. But what I would say is it does not have to be a very large space. Even with 1 or 2 rooms, you can be setting up a community lifelong learning centre. Okay, and sorry, just to go back a slide there, to note that particular one is life-wide also. So family-based Ballyfermot focuses on early years, the children and family, as well as youth and community. So that runs across all the age groups in the community. What I'd also note about in that one is that young people, for example, can do graffiti on the walls of the centre. Their voices is heard. They're very central and active in designing and leading approaches there. So that is a community lifelong learning centre, life-wide learning centre, and a gateway multidisciplinary team that has the broad-based approaches and the individual complex needs approaches. So that's the kind of maybe the gold standard model, I would argue, for some versions of community lifelong learning centres. I'm going to now hand over to my colleague, Sarah McManus.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah McManus, and I am one of the coordinators of the Community Lifelong Learning Hubs through GCU. The project itself is funded through the Higher Education Authority. The primary aim of the project initially is to increase the number of students from underrepresented groups that we've been hearing about earlier in the presentation and helping them enter into initial teacher education. So we would be looking at the formal education system and getting people into teaching in primary with younger children and even into secondary schools with 15+ teenagers. At the moment, our hubs are located in areas of Dublin City that would typically have lower progression rates into further and higher education. In 2017, the hubs were established in the areas of Coolock, Kilbarrack and Darndale. And this was launched, the launch of this project was launched by the Minister of Education and Skills. So I feel that really shows the buy-in and the need from a governmental level as well, that the project is worth showing through. Due to the success of the initial project, we actually expanded to Finglas. So we now have a Finglas hub, which would be a similar demographic to Coolock, Kilbarrack and Darndale, and that happened in 2021. So to give some context around the areas, these are areas where people would experience disadvantage, whether it's socioeconomic, it's capital disadvantage, it's educational disadvantage. And we do have specific target cohorts, like Professor Paul Downs mentioned earlier on. So we would work with people from the age of 15+ that are experiencing disadvantage. The parent cohort, we may be experiencing people coming in that are lone parents, parenting alone, or people that have distanced themselves or for whatever reason from the education system, and getting them back into education in a community space where it's welcoming and it's safe. And we also work with special needs assistants. So a special needs assistant would be a professional working in a classroom, a formal education classroom, as a support in a supporting role to the teacher. And mature students would be considered anybody over the age of 23 years of age. We take a participant-centered approach, and it really is all about empowering the individual to empower the wider community. I myself am from one of the local communities. I am from Finglas, and like that, coming back to education for me was a massive thing. So having a safe space within a community where you can empower the individual, create an environment where they can grow themselves, where they develop the skills, academic skills, and self-confidence skills to progress into tertiary education, and then to come back and feed that back down into the community. Teachers are such a role model for society as a whole, and particularly for young people. They really have that influence in you know, how they pursue their education going forwards. So that's why the focus would be around teaching as a role. This just gives you an outline of some of the supports that we offer. So it's broken down into 4 different sections. We have academic classes, which would focus around bringing up academic supports. Just to note, we do have an emphasis on the Irish language, because in Ireland, to become a primary school teacher, you need to have a specific standard of Irish. Our information sessions, I find these are really, really important. We would have parents that come to us on a one-to-one basis, and they're not sure they want to send their young person to college, or we've a mature student that wants to return to education, but they're concerned about the financial implications of it. So giving people the information to be able to apply, to support them to apply for local and government grants, which we have, is really important. The aspirational piece is, I feel, when we've got them into the drop-in service that we have in the local community, we've supported them to build their self-confidence, and then we outreach, we bring them out to the university in small groups, and we meet academics like Professor Paul Downs, and it's a gradual exposure process. And then wellbeing supports are at the front and foremost. We would have a lot of people that would maybe be concerned about their mental health or be worrying with stress. So we try our best to offer services within our hubs that can support people through this. Just to finish up, to date, since 2017, we've 34 participants from our hubs have engaged or got entry into the primary school teaching degree in DCU Institute of Education. Referring back to the baseline, that would be to a baseline of almost 0 in the previous decade. And here you can see on the screen, we have some of the images from our actual hub participants. At our launch there, we have Professor Paul Downs, and we have some other academics that support the project. It is supported by the community. And just to give you an idea of the participants' voice, because they're so important, we've included some of the comments that participants have made about the project on this slide. I will now hand you back to Paul Downs. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I would just finish with some questions. Before I do that, I just want to just build on one other point that Sarah made, which is the drop-in point. That's really important, that community lifelong learning centres are not by appointment, that you have to schedule meetings a week in advance, 2 weeks in advance. You're talking to people who may have more unstructured lives, and they can't, and it's very important that there is that drop-in element, that welcoming is a feature of it, is that it's not all planned months or weeks in advance, like by appointment, that it is a much more flexible approach. In terms of just key questions for the strategic development of these, I would suggest to you look at some of these ones. Are there already existing obvious local community space structures in Asian contexts to build from for community lifelong learning centres that are accessible and welcoming for different marginalised groups? So can you build from existing well-established community space structures? Which ministries are best to lead in funding these? How can universities, the last example there given by Sarah is a university promoted community lifelong learning centre or hub. How can universities in Asia be involved in these? As well as then from a research perspective, it's important to get the voice-based process methodology, how to best capture that in Asian contexts. That's the voices of young people, children, but also marginalised groups and ethnic minorities. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul and Sarah. I was wondering where Sarah was, but then we figured out that we were in the same room, so that's really good. Thank you for sharing these very valuable insights as well, and very good examples of what you are doing. We are now open to questions for the first two interventions from the audience. We are live on Facebook, so people can also raise questions in the Facebook Live, but also here in the webinar. Please feel free to ask your questions using the Q&A or the comments, the chats. Maybe as people might still be thinking about their questions and a lot of information to digest that was shared, maybe I can start as a moderator with a quick question for both of you. I think what is important in all these community lifelong learning centers is to understand what is the role of let's say formal, non-formal, and informal learning providers. I think it's very, in the case of that Paul you mentioned, I mean, university has quite a key role. So, but well, in Asia, we will see later, maybe universities are not that involved, or in other European cases, the formal education is not so involved. It's more the employment offices, or it will be some community social services space. So it depends a lot, but I think it's very important to understand how do these different forms of learning and education providers come together to construct something like a community centers. Shall they work together?
Yeah. I don't know, Ray, please come in after me or before me if you wish. Ray, I don't know whether you want to talk on the formal part in particular. Basically, it's very important that if you have people who are quite afraid to go back into education, quite afraid to go into spaces, afraid they're going to be found out as not knowing something, and we can all feel like this. You know, so in such a situation, you know, I went back to, my wife is Polish, I went back to a lifelong learning class to learn Polish a few years ago, and I felt, you know, nervous going in because I couldn't speak Polish, and I thought I was going to be made look like, you know, not knowing what I was talking about. So everyone can feel nervous going into new social situations. So it's very important that the non-formal is the starting point. So that's where you're not being assessed, you're not doing exams. And so you get that bit, and then you feel at ease, you may build social networks, you know the place, you've had the cups of tea and coffee, you get to know the ground, and then you have the options for the formal. So it's a both and model I would be arguing for, that when you have the both and model and you're not pressuring people, it's not seen as not a success to go into the formal, or you do it later in your life. You know, there's different times for that. So it's about, you know, if you've got something that's open all week, you can have classes at different times in different rooms with different groups. But I think it's the social networks part. If they find that one of their friends is now doing a formal education class, that's maybe more going to help someone else come along and do the formal education class. Just to note also, there's an example from Kosovo called the Balkan Sunflowers, where they have the mothers and daughters coming together that from the Roma community to go to attend the class together. So there can be different ways in which you bridge the generations across those. So in terms of the university involvement, there's funding from our higher education authority for our university to be involved in this. But certainly I think there's a lot more can be done where universities can help have a presence in local communities to build up a cultural learning communities of practice. So the fact that it is a university promoted space in the local community is, I think, an important factor in the status of the community hub as well.
Thank you, Paul. Irene, what's your
I fully agree with the perspectives that Paul has shared, and this is what I also pointed while I was presenting my slides, is the importance to start with a non-formal education where the individual feels comfortable, may build a trustful relationship with the professionals involved. And as I said, first of all, before going into trying to reskill or upskill or provide any kind of education to this person, is to take care of all the other spheres, all the other areas of his life and all the traumas and the risk factors that he is facing. Many community lifelong learning centers may provide vocational training, for example, but in very different settings and in a very different approaches. The important is that then these links, Brikenna, that you mentioned, this communication between the formal and the non-formal pathways are well established in order for the individual to be able, after fixing all the other areas, be able to proceed and continue, for example, within vocational education and training and leading to a formal qualification if this is her wish. An important mechanism and an important intervention approach that needs to be in place is also the validation of non-formal and informal learning, which is a very important mechanism to enable this continuity in the pathways of the individuals. So that's from my side.
Thank you. Thank you very much to both. I couldn't agree more indeed on the complementarity and the links between them, which is key. Do we have any other questions that I might not see coming from Facebook or the chat? No. If so, I mean, there was already a question that Paul, you answered on the chat. Thank you for clarifying that. Well, I don't know if the other Asian colleagues would like to maybe ask any questions to Paul or Irene. No? Then maybe I can ask one last question and then we can dive into the examples from Asia. We are launching today the network, the research network on the value and the work of non-formal and informal education. But one key stakeholder that is often recognized in that field is the civil society organizations. I would like to have your opinion about how do you see civil society organizations playing a role in building such communities, in maintaining or reaching out to those groups that are more in need for these type of spaces that you, Paul, mentioned.
Yeah, to come in on that, we would have a civil society structure in Ireland, which is called the Local Area Partnership. So they're kind of local area structures, and they have been key partners for us in setting up the local community hubs. We have two, they're Northside Area Partnership and Dublin Northwest Area Partnership. So civil society structures can play a key role in knowing the local spaces. So for example, where is a good place to, you know, set up at the centre, where different parts of a fractured community might willingly go, that they feel safe to go in, that's from people like them go to. Because you can say, I remember seeing a sports centre being set up in one part of Dublin where I was trying to persuade a teenage boy to go to the sports centre. It was only about 200 metres away from where he lived, but he would not go there because it was not a space that people from his apartment block went to. So that the neutral spaces in the community and the local community sensitivities is where the local civil society organisations can play a big role in being a bridge between, for example, the university and the local community. Similarly, for the family scope, family-based model, the local area partnerships played a role there initially in getting some European funding to bridge that, to kind of develop the whole vision for that. So I think civil society can play a huge role as a catalyst, as a mediator, to kind of put the proposals up, to bring different communities together, to get the territories overcome, all of those kinds of processes, to hear the local needs, and of course, different generational needs. So civil society, I think, really has to, they have to be the ones with the passion to drive this. And then you get the bureaucrats who are living in the ministries or, you know, working in the ministries to then provide the money. But it has to be the passion from civil society to ask for this, to show the other models, and to really kind of get the ministry to do that.
Thank you. Irene, you would like to comment on this?
I fully agree. Just to add that for us at CEDEFOB, civil society is a key partner in the development of skills and vocational education and training. And as I mentioned before, actually, we do see the civil society as embedded within the community lifelong learning centers. So everything that Paul has mentioned is as the role of the civil society that would have is absolutely the case.
Yeah, I actually noted down that indeed the civil society are the catalysts, the bridge builders, the mediators. So definitely a role that or a stakeholder that we cannot forget when building community centers. I see Somali has raised her hand, most probably for a question. So please.
Yes, thank you, Bettina. I like the question of Paul that how can university in Asian country develop local community outreach? So I just would like to share some example. Most of the university in Thailand, they have the what they call continuing education center that they provide short course for people who want to reskill and upskill, you know, in a short course. But most of university in the country, in every province, they have a project, you know, to do the research and to do the, you know, education activity with their community, you know, in their area that the university located. Yeah. So that's some information. Yes,
that's very interesting to hear.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I suppose the other argument I have is that you can kind of build from that to add the different layers then also.
Yeah.
And you know, so and one question would be, would there be non-formal education classes also in those centers, or is it all formal education?
Mostly non-formal education activities.
Non-formal. Great.
Yeah.
And can I just ask you that the bridge then between health and education, that's what the family scope, family-based model has tried to do. Mental health supports, you know, because there's a big mental health crisis, certainly in many Western countries, particularly since the pandemic, but before that also. So how you can make the health and education, so the holistic needs of the learners would be
actually, the university also have some coordination with the non-formal and informal education center in local area. The non-formal and informal education center will provide some service for local people. And for those who want to continue their education at a higher level, they can contact with the university because we coordinate with each other like that.
So it's great to hear that this is potentially a worldwide movement that we need to develop. You know?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much to both of you.
Could I just, before you leave, I think the point that Paul makes is exactly right. And that's why we have established this research network. I think it's an opportunity for us to share good practice across Asia and Europe in particular, but you know, it can be included to across the globe. So that's the whole mission of this project.
Absolutely. And yeah, indeed, thank you very much for sharing already among the two. But I think we will leave the floor also to the examples from Asia, and then maybe we'll have the time to discuss between us. But I think it's indeed very important what you mentioned about the mental health as well, because yeah, just before coming to this webinar, we were in a webinar with the professors at the universities of Hungary, and one of the professors was actually sharing a lot of recent data and research on how the mental capacity, the mental health of learners nowadays is a huge challenge for any teacher or professor or educator, and must be taken into account because it's changing. We don't have anymore the same learners. So that's definitely something we have to take into account. But thank you, and I will give the floor to Juvie maybe to guide us into the next part. Thank you for Paul and Irene.
Thank you. Thank you, Rikena, and thank you, Paul. Thank you, Rena, and thank you, Sarah. Thank you for those interesting presentations, and we learned a lot from you. Okay, so before proceeding to the Asian context, I would like to greet all those who are watching in Facebook. We have almost 200 viewers. So please stay with us. And if you have some questions, please write them down in the comment section of the Facebook. And now, Filipinos, please be ready. I know it's 9 p.m. in the Philippines, but please wake up, because we are now in the exciting part, which we proceed now to the Asian context, where we have two distinguished speakers. The first speaker is the officer in charge of the Balanga City Education and Excellence Development Office in the Philippines, and she is instrumental for the city's Seal of Good Governance, which they received in 2021, as well as they are also the Hall of Fame awardee in the national literacy. Now, may I call on Ms. Tara Ann Pagdanganan from Balanga City.
Hello, good afternoon. Okay, so the questions,
evening.
I think it will be on my presentation, the linkages and the partnership with the civic society. So let me share my screen. Okay, good afternoon in London and good evening here in the Philippines. So the city of Balanga, so our vision is the smart university town by 2030, an established center for global technology businesses. So my presentation will be the overview of the city of Balanga, our youth development programs, and our community engagement programs. So there's a well-known African proverb which states that it takes a village to raise a child. These proverbs emphasize the role of the community in child rearing. Individual members of the community should work hand in hand in order to provide safest environment and the best learning opportunity for children. Balanga has long considered this important dynamics. Collaboration has been one of the major driving forces in the successful implementation of its lifelong learning program. So to give you an overview about the Balanga City, nestling at the center of Bataan, the city of Balanga serves as the province's capital, located 124 kilometers west of Metro Manila. So it has a land area of 11,163 hectares, encompassing 25 barangays or villages. 14 were classified as urban, 6 was urban, and 5 as rural areas. So the Philippine Statistic Office places Balanga City's annual growth rate at 1.68%, of which 53,789 are male and 54,000 are female. So with 68.91 in the age of bracket of 17 and above. So the majority are underproductive years. So the diverse topography of Balanga allowed the city to approach growth and development differently. Due to physical constraint, it is rather difficult for the city to compete with the neighboring industrial zones. So hence, the city invested in its wealth, which is the people. Balanga aimed to cultivate its citizens and supply these industries with the talent pool they needed. So for Balanga to do this, the city has to start from the grassroots, that is the community. So programs that center on youth and development were created. So this is our youth-centered program. So the first is the Project Duke. So it is a collaborative effort of the city government of Balanga through the help of the non-government organization, which was launched in 2014. It aims to empower the out-of-school youth through the use of bibliotherapy. So the first 2 seasons of the program used traditional method of storytelling and reading. The chosen stories theme dealt with the issues being faced of our out-of-school youth, such as financial difficulty, peer pressure, family problems, and so on. Technology was incorporated in season 3. Instead of traditional storytelling, readers and participants used Kindle tablet. The stories and modules were installed on the tablet. So this exposed our OSY, or the out-of-school youth, to use modern technology in reading. In addition to that, they also had Khan Academy sessions in our Barangay Learning Hub. This project is being supported by the De Guzman Group of Companies, who own several businesses in Balanga City. So next is our UCamp Leadership training or the university camp leadership training. So Balanga recognizes the young people play in nation building. It is important to empower and equip them with leadership skills. So UCamp leadership training is born out of the city's desire to provide literacy program and training to young leaders coming from different colleges, organizations, and non-government organizations. Other one is the University Town Summit. So the University Town Summit is a 2-day seminar given to college students that aims to update them with current issues and trends in technology. This is a project of the city government in cooperation with the different colleges and university in the city. Next is the Gulayan sa Paaralan, or we call it School Garden. This program aims to educate students on the process of planting vegetables and help students determine the benefits that will be derived from it. So the yield from the Gulayan sa Paaralan are utilized for the feeding program of the school. The undernourished children are the beneficiaries of this program. So we also have the community-centered program. So this is the Kaanib, or we call it Kasama Ani sa Barangay, or it means shared gardening. So since 2007, the city government of Balanga, through the City Agriculture Office, has been engaging in lifelong learning programs in the field of agriculture. The Kaanib program supports the city's program on food production, nutrition, poverty alleviation, and environmental protection by providing alternative livelihood to non-working mothers, out-of-school youth, and various sectors of the city. The City Agriculture Office extension workers conduct lectures on graphic vegetable production, hands-on training on land preparation, and seed sowing and marketing of farm produce. Next is the dressmaking training center. So it has been providing training to members of the community who wanted to learn how to sew and use it as a career option. The center is being used by teachers from the alternative learning system. Completers of the training are either endorsed to companies in processing zones or encouraged to start on their own. Next is the Barangay Learning Hub. The city government collaborated with the Multi-Sectoral Governance Coalition Group to establish the first learning hub. It was February 2016. The Barangay Learning Hub is a facility equipped with computer with fast internet connection. These computers are loaded with various software and electronic books that will aid in literacy and learning. The aim of the Learning Hub is to provide supplemental education and access to computers and the internet through guidance and computer-based learning. Further, this project also aims to bridge the digital divide that exists within the community. This successful project inspired the city to establish more learning hubs. So to date, there are 17 barangay learning hubs in low-lying, upland, and coastal areas of Balanga City. So out of 25 barangays, we already have 17. And currently, we are on the process of establishing a skills training center that will provide different training skills in the community. So for more than a decade, Balanga has been implementing programs that yielded the desired output, an empowered individual who can still change within himself, the community, and the society. We kept the fire burning with the help of stakeholders and the community. We have shown that together we can achieve great things. Together we can continue providing excellent lifelong learning programs for the community, and that together we will be one step closer to achieve our desired vision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tara, for this presentation about Balanga City. And I also noticed a lot of people from the Philippines are watching via Facebook. I think they are your students as well. So let's proceed.
We have this program. We call it Scholar ng Bataan. So they are all our scholars. So as to date, we have already 12,000 scholars in the whole province.
Okay, thank you. Great. Okay, so let's proceed to the next presenter. From the Philippines, we go to Thailand. And Professor Sumali Sungsri is a professor at the School of Educational Studies of Sukhothai Thammathirat Open University in Thailand. And she has published a number of books and textbooks and papers in the field of non-formal and informal education, lifelong education, and distance education. So, Professor Dr. Sumali, please.
Thank you very much, Juvi. May I share my slide first? Oh, sorry.
If you need me to share, could share, Sumali.
Maybe I just ask you to sharing the slide for me, please. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Good evening from Thailand. I'm very pleased to have a chance to join with you with the webinar today and to share with you about non-formal and informal education in Community Learning Center in Thailand. What I'm going to present to you is under the 3 subtopics. Next slide, please. Introduction, provision of non-formal and informal education, and a case study of non-formal and informal education activity in one sub-district. Okay. In Thailand, the importance of lifelong education had been recognized many years ago, as it was officially stipulated in the National Policies and Development Plan since 1977 up to now. Next, please. The country, for the education system of the country, we follow the philosophy of lifelong education, that we have formal education, non-formal education, and informal education.
Sorry, Sumali, you actually could control the
Okay,
screen
I
if you
try
want.
to.
Yep.
I try to control the slide by myself. Okay. For formal education, we have school available in every region, every province, and every district and sub-district. And we have 9-year compulsory school. But for the provision of non-formal education and informal education, are provided for out-of-school children, working people, and elderly people. And the responsible department for non-formal and informal education is firstly is Adult Education Division in Ministry of Education, and then they change the name and upgrade to be department. And lately, they just changed the name to be Department of Learning Encouragement. So I just show you the organization structure. The department have the regional center in every region. And under each region, there are a number of provinces, and they have the provincial non-formal and informal education center in every province. And under the province, they have district center in every district. And under the district, we have sub-district center, or we call community learning center. Okay. For non-formal education activity, each center will provide both non-formal education activity and informal education activity. Non-formal education activity are provided in 3 main groups. The first one is basic education. The second one is vocational education and skill training. And the third one is education for quality of life development. And for informal education activity, they provide in form of local library in every province, and also local library in every district, They also provide learning resource center in various fields. They provide community books house in each village. They have open market library, and they also provide knowledge and information through different kind of media. So these are the form of informal education. So I would like to show you one case study in Ban Phương sub-district. Okay, this is a non-formal and informal education center, or if you like, it can be called the community learning center. Ban Phương sub-district is in Nakhon Phanom province in the northeastern part of Thailand. It is located along the Mekong River, which is the border of the two countries, Thailand and Laos PDR. There are 23 villages in this sub-district with a total population of 16,601 people. Okay. For this sub-district center, they have one officer staff from the non-formal and informal education district center at the sub-district center. The staff act as a coordinator, and then they set up a sub-district committee with represent from every group of people in the community. And then the committee identify needs of people in the area. After that, they develop a plan for providing non-formal and informal education. They coordinate with related agency and network, and then they provide non-formal and informal education activity, both at the center and in each village. And then they follow up the result and adjust the activity. This is the role of the center, okay? For non-formal education activity, they have three main groups of activity. The first one, they call non-formal basic education. The activity include literacy program, basic education equivalent to primary education, lower secondary education, and upper secondary education. So I show you some, picture. This is literacy class in the village, okay? And they also have a lower secondary education class, for people who want to, who may left school earlier, and then they come back to education again, okay? Okay, for the second group of non-formal education activity, we call vocational education and skill training. They provide short course training for income generating in various fields like making cement floor, ceiling frame building, carpenter, electricity, welding, basket weaving, agriculture, traditional food, and desserts. So let I show you. Yeah, this is basket weaving, bamboo rice box weaving, grass wool weaving, Thai dessert, making salted and sweet crispy banana, agriculture, making can krao bouquet from soy. Can krao is the local flower in that area. So people try to make the artificial flower and make as a bouquet. Yeah, this is when it's finished, it's look like this. And the third group of non-formal education activity called knowledge and skill related to quality of life development. They provide in form of giving knowledge on the way of life in the line of sufficiency economy, philosophy, provide knowledge about how to prevent themselves from drug addiction, healthcare, exercise, meditation, cultural activities. So these are some examples. This meditation in the sub-district, they organize at the temple. This is cultural activity, in the cultural days, dancing for exercise. Yeah. Okay, that's all for non-formal education activity. And another part of education that they provide is informal education. The district and sub-district NFE center provide a lot of activity. For example, reading corner as a small library at the sub-district center, a community books house, a learning resource center on environment preservation, on culture, on weaving or something like that. So they have several groups. For example, this is a reading corner at the sub-district center. This is the community books house at the village. Okay. This is the reading corner at the shop in the sub-district. Okay. The benefit that people get from the learning center, the first one is it was a community-based development, and the activity will serve the need of people. It was a holistic quality of life development, which include education, occupation, economic, health, and culture. The learning community extend lifelong learning opportunity for all. The villagers learn to adjust themselves with the present situation. The villagers recognize the importance of education and it creates their learning habit. It promotes people participation in their community development, and it also promotes participation of related sector, whether local government, non-government, and local community. So thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sumali, for this presentation. And indeed, they are very important examples on how learning centers are being run in Asia, the case of Balanga and also in the case of Thailand. So in both cases, you could see that there are efforts in these communities. While in Balanga case, it has been very apparent that there's congruence of different efforts of the society, like government, NGOs, and then private business sectors participating. So it's very important that you have to involve all the stakeholders to be successful. Despite the fact that in the Philippines, we still have to enact a framework on policy on lifelong learning. We still don't have it. Unlike Thailand, which has already a framework policy on lifelong learning. So, but these are, yes, you have a policy in the Philippines, although it's there are pronouncement. We don't still have to be ratified. They're still debating on whether to approve or not. So I will now like to ask the questions that are written here in the Q&A. Perhaps you can read them, Tara and Sumali. There are two questions here about the, let me read for purposes of those in Facebook, watching in Facebook. Are there perennial challenges experienced in the implementation of community lifelong learning centers in your country? If there are, how are these challenges addressed? And another one from Sunsika Sanik Bluinik, questions for all. How are the programs financed? Do the participants themselves pay for them, or is there a system of state, local, or international co-financing or full financing? Anybody can
in
answer
Thailand,
this?
In Thailand, for financial get support, because the Department of Non-Formal and Informal Education Center get the financial for the government, and they allocate financial to regional center, provincial center, and district center, to organize activity. And they also got donation from the community, from the stakeholder, or from the government and non-government agency in local area as well.
Okay, thank you,
They
Somali.
can I answer? So the first question, so I think I don't remember any challenges when we are implementing this lifelong learning programs, because the city has the vision to have the focus of the city is the education. So we have this Barangay Learning Week and roadshow that our officials going to barangays to discuss the programs, discuss the objective, the goals, and the vision of the city. And so I don't think we have the challenges. The challenges is how to encourage the community to join or participate in our program. But still, we have this collaboration, we have this coordination and cooperation in the community. So all the programs that we are implemented is always successful. And then about question number 2, we have this, like what we said, like what I said, we have this collaboration with our non-government organizations, our business sectors that helping us to not helping us monetarily or support in all our programs. So all our programs is supported by our NGOs, by our business sector. So we always have this stakeholders that helping us and cooperating with us in all our programs in the city, especially when it's all about education.
Juvi, for the first question, the challenge in Thailand is how to motivate people to participate in activity, non-formal and informal education activity, particularly the working age people, because they have to work to earn their income. Sometimes they feel that they have no time to participate in activity. So that's why the center have to organize the activity that can serve their needs and can help them to have income generating like that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, Ma'am
do we
Juby,
have
in addition,
Yes,
because there's do the participants themselves pay for them? No, all the programs that we are implementing in the city is free for all the citizens in the city. Even the trainings, skill trainings, lectures, all of that are free for all the citizens of Balanga City.
that's good to know, Tara. Okay, so is there any question from the Facebook? None? None. Okay, thank you, Ian. So I know we have so many things to discuss. We want so many questions to ask also from our speakers, but unfortunately, we don't have enough time for it. So I would like to thank each and every one, all the speakers who are here, the members of the network, the organizers. I would like to thank everyone. And of course, all of you who are watching, thank you very much. And I think I have some instructions here. Simus would like to say something.
Okay, I just want to acknowledge the efforts of everybody here today. I saw from Nia's message that over 1,000 people attended, which is a phenomenal success. So that's really, really amazing. And I think it's important that we acknowledge the work of Nia and Phuong, both of them who have done incredible work in getting all of this organized. So well done to both of you. Really, really super work. I'm really, really impressed, and everything was just so smooth and so well run. Thanks again as well to Juvi, to Brigina for taking on leadership of this. It's like once we see what people are saying, and once we see the presentations that we've seen today, we really, really see how important this work is in terms of changing the lives of ordinary people. And there is no more important work that we could do than changing the lives of people and helping them to create new futures for themselves, their communities, their families, those around them. So I think it is really astonishing and astounding work. When I was both in the Philippines and in Thailand, I had an opportunity to see Balanga in person. And Sumali showed us a different example today, but I saw one that was equally impressive. What was astounding, and is astounding in both cases, is that, you know, it's got such a practical application. It's doing stuff that is really, 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 you know, dealing with the context in which people are operating and really addressing those issues. And I've said this every time since I've come back from Asia. Europe has so much to learn from Asia. We have so much to learn. And I really am excited that we have a strong Asian voice here, because I think it will bring a lot of energy and ideas to us in Europe. So thank you very much for that. And thanks to all of you. And Brakina, you were the catalyst that got this going to begin with. And interestingly, Juvie, you I think opened doors for me to see Tara's project, and then Sumali brought me off to the project in Thailand, and all of those things really energized me to say, oh my God, we just absolutely have to do something in this space. So I'm really, really delighted. And Pia, it's great to see you on board as well, because I know we had Pia here a few months ago, and like, it was just so interesting getting your perspectives and seeing you engaging with all of this as well. So look, I think we've got a really good foundation for a really dynamic network here, and I'm really excited about working with you, because this is an area that really excites me. It's so important, and I'm blown away by all of you who've done such a magnificent job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Seamus. And again, congratulations to the launching of the research network, to the members of the network. And of course, we hope to be able to contribute more researches and more activities for this network in the next few years to come. Okay, so I have some instructions here for you to get your certificate. Nia? Okay, so to get your certificate, you can scan the QR code and take the survey for certification of attendance. And of course, there's an email here to join the research network. You can email this address. Okay, so thank you very much. Anything more to add from the members of the network? So thank you so much, and we wish you all a good day and a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you to our scholars.
Yes, so those who are watching in Facebook, thank you all. And you can also, the recording of this webinar will be posted in the ASEM LLL Hub YouTube account. So you can share also the link so that your friends or colleagues can watch this webinar again if they miss it.